Welcome back, everybody. We are here on the new morning show, the new Now morning show, and we are going to speak about a very pressing topic this morning. It is my pleasure to be chatting this morning with Kevin Liverpool, who's the administrator of Caribbean Male Action Network, also known as Cariman, and Cariman takes a stand for women. Good morning, Kevin, and welcome.
Good morning, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
Now, in light of, not so recent events, it's just that it's come to a head recently. When it comes to violence against women. I don't want to say gender-based violence. I want to say violence against women specifically. We have seen so many things happen over the past few weeks, including the protests and all these things, and various groups being formed and various groups coming out to voice and protest against what is happening and what continues to happen here in Trinidad and Tobago as pertains to violence against women. Now, Cariman has recently come up with this pledge, and I'd really call that pledge an action plan for men. First off, before we go into the pledge itself, tell us about Cariman and what you do.
Sure. So Cariman is a regional network of individuals and organizations working to transform masculinities and engage men and boys to promote gender equality and end violence against women and girls. Currently, we are located in 8 Caribbean countries where we work with various organizations that work with men and boys to ensure that their programs are gender transformative.
And it is so necessary, it's such necessary work. And, as we were speaking earlier in our trending segment, we were speaking of the need for organizations like this, because you all are taking front, taking the steps and taking the action necessary to facilitate prevention rather than cure, rather than punishing the perpetrators. You're looking to inculcate a culture within men that is more positive and something that it pushes the proper agenda forward. Now, with the pledge, tell us about the formation of the pledge and the importance of the pledge.
Sure. So we would have all experienced that very traumatic event in January with Andrea Barrett. Just a few weeks after a wife was murdered by her husband.
Right.
A few weeks before that, we had Ashanti.
Right.
And usually at those times, we get a lot of comments from the public that men ought to do better and men need to improve. And at Cariman, we thought it best that we should write down the specific ways that men can improve and the specific ways that men can take responsibility in their day-to-day lives to end violence against women and girls. So this pledge really represents that collection of values. I mean, we couldn't put everything in there, but it represents a collection of values that if men agree and practice in their day-to-day lives and hold other men accountable to, we can begin to see a shift in the way that we treat women and girls.
I like the way you said, practices that they can do in their everyday lives, because really there's a great degree of misogyny that comes in the male culture. In our culture here in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a lot of misogyny that is just a normal part of it, the way men speak about women, the way men speak to women at times. How do we begin addressing that itself and changing what is perceived to be a normal man?
Yeah, and that is not unique to Trinidad and Tobago or the Caribbean. We find across the world that all countries battle with that misogyny, battle with that sexism that places women as less than men and places feminine as less than masculine. And what we do at Cariman, we help men and boys begin to challenge those existing social and cultural stereotypes and norms and beliefs and values around what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. Simple things such as, we all heard it growing up that boys are not supposed to cry.
Right.
And if you're crying, you're behaving like a girl.
Right.
So those are the early seeds that set, the stage for what we're seeing today.
It's so true, and we need action against it, and that's why Cariman has come up with the Men's Pledge.
Yeah.
And the Men's Pledge itself, there are certain key points here: have peaceful relationships, value what women say, and let's just go through these points in brief.
Sure. So those main pledge points really point to some, measurable behavior change that men could begin to work on every day. The first one is have peaceful relationships, and those would be relationships with women, relationships with other men, and relationships with children, ensuring that we resolve conflict in non-violent ways. Another one is valuing what women see. Oftentimes, you know, some men can have the tendency of interrupting women and thinking because they are women, they don't have the expertise. So it's really encouraging men to recognize the contributions of women and value what they have to say, treating women with respect. And in particular here, we wanted to focus on catcalling and street harassment. You know, because that is something, and you were alluding to it, that is something that we think is the norm and normal, especially in Trinidad. But it's something that when you listen to women, it's something that they are really uncomfortable with, and it's an invasion of privacy as well.
They feel unsafe.
Yeah. Respecting consent, understanding that consent, with consent comes boundaries, and that only yes means yes, and that consent could be withdrawn at any time. Sharing the care was another important one, and this involves encouraging men to play a greater role at home. You know, the research around the world shows that women perform 4 to 10 times as much household tasks and childcare when compared to men, even when women work. So we're encouraging men to let's be equitable in how we arrange those domestic chores. Holding men accountable. At Cariman, we always say that you know, you must always call out your brethren. The men that you know, the men that are around you. If you hear anything hurtful, hurtful words, hurtful behaviors, interrupt them. You know, interrupt them. And then after you call them out, call them in and have a conversation about, you know, why you think that way, how could that joke lead to something bigger later on.
What about calling out men on the street? Men, you know, not only a brethren, but people who you come across in any daily activity that is saying or doing something disrespectful to a woman.
Yeah, and that comes with a level of risk because it's someone you don't know, and you don't know how that will go. So right now we're focusing on the men that you know, the men closest to you, the men who you already have a relationship with, the boys who you already have a relationship with. We're starting there before. And we believe that once we start there and the mindsets begin to change and the culture begins to shift a bit, more and more men would be included, and those on the outskirts with those undesirable behaviors, you know, would feel marginalized, and you know, that could probably encourage them to change their behavior.
That's right. We have some other points to go through, but we also have some gentlemen who are going to come on in a little bit to actually sign the pledge. So before we get into that, what's the importance, what's the significance of writing your name down and you know, signing up for this pledge itself? Yeah.
So the pledge is available on our website at cariman.org, cariman.org, and you can go on there, input your name, your email address, and once you sign the pledge, you'll be able to be connected with Cariman, and we can include you in future activities, whether they are educational activities or whether they are forms of activism, you know, to keep that momentum going, because we understand that men feel overwhelmed during these times as well.
Sometimes. You know, so how can women support men who sign for this pledge?
Right, that's a good question. And what we want women, partners, and friends to understand is that we're not asking perfect men to sign the pledge, nor does the pledge make a man perfect. So the first thing is to understand that this is not an overnight fix. This is not going to change a person's behavior. This is a commitment to change the way we think, speak, and behave. You know, and so we're asking for that patience as men go through that process.
Wonderful. And I'm going to invite the gentlemen to come on and actually sign the pledge live on set here, and we'll continue our conversation as well. And first up is Raymond. So, you know, we had something here at this station where us men of the station all did a part, and we said the pledge to camera, and you know, it's going to be put out in the near future. You know, a full stitch video of the various individuals, male individuals from the company here, reciting the pledge, and you know, and really showing, standing by what the pledge says, and showing on a very public forum, you know, the significance and what it means to us, and actually reciting the pledge itself. That's Bertrand Moses, who just signed there. And yeah, as I was saying, that you know, we're publicly showing our support for the pledge and what it really means. How do more men get involved?
Yeah, and this is something that men can take ownership of. So, for example, I have an 8-year-old son, and I have already begun going through the different pledge points with him, you know, contextualizing it to his age, so that men can own this. Men can own this, they can share it in their spaces. organizations that work with men and boys can take this, can direct their members to Cariman's websites and encourage their members to sign on. So it's something that we hope, as you see there's a national flag on it, there's something that we hope that could be really embraced by the national public, and men can sign on and encourage it and keep it going.
And as you said, men to sign on, just very briefly, we have a little bit of time. What does it mean to be a Cariman?
All right, so being a Cariman means that you're committed to the values of gender equality, meaning the equality between men and women.
Perfectly said. And with that, I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning, Kevin Liverpool. And we are going to close it now as we go to the top of the hour with the news at 7 o'clock. And when we come back, we have much more than our morning program. Stay right where you are. This is an Our Morning Show.